Is technology at your work distracting you from actual work? Do you spend too much time troubleshooting PC or internet issues? IT Enabled can help. Our team of IT specialists can help you tackle your technology troubles and get you focused on growing your business in no time. Call to schedule your technology consultation. 936-225-3329. IT Enabled. We're here to help.
So today we are so excited to have with us Jeff Walker, who is the Executive Director of the Stubblefield Learning Center. Welcome, Jeff. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Why don't you give the listeners kind of a background on yourself, and then we'll go into Stubblefield.
Okay. My name's Jeff Walker, and I love what I do. My favorite thing to do is to talk about Stubblefield Learning Center. And if you're from Lufkin, it's called Beth and Horace Stubblefield's the official title. Mm-hmm. And it was memorialized, or I guess it was given that name to honor Beth and Horace Stubblefield from a tragic passing years ago. But the inception of Stubblefield has quite the history, going all the way back to the early 90s. At the time, Marianne Whitaker was on an educational board, advisory board here at the Chamber, and they had a problem. And the dropout rate in Angelina County was 38%. Wow. That's what I was told. And they had a unique way of tracking dropouts at the time. They just looked at the senior class year to year. And the state does it differently now. But to think about, being a senior in high school and thinking 1 out of 3 people weren't going to walk that stage with you it's really startling. And so a lot of key leaders in the community at that time said, we got to do something. Mm-hmm. And so they started thinking about all these alternative settings. How can we reach these students that aren't quite making it? And so thus comes about Stubblefield and in this alternative setting to allow students to come in and work at their own pace that are having, difficult environments maybe at home or just circumstance in general, and allow them to finish their high school diploma. And so in 1996, the first year of operation, it began. And so Marianne Whitaker was a key establisher of that. Sally Darmstadter came in as the first director, and really she was the director for 20 years.
That's a long time.
And I came in after her. And so during that course of time, it was allowing students to be referred by the 5 county school districts to come over and finish their diploma in a flexible format, non-traditional, so to speak. And so since then, there's been 1,915 graduates to come through and get their high school diploma. So there's quite the legacy going back to these early 90s when it was just a thought. Mm-hmm. And now to have this operation go for 25 years now and continue to be successful is really impressive.
And how long have you been there?
I just finished 4 years.
Okay.
And it's been the best job I've ever had. And the reason I say that is it's a joy to kind of get to be a part of other people's success. Mm-hmm. Once we've reached a certain point in life, we've kind of done a few things and it's like, okay, now what? But every day, every year, I get to see other people achieve something that they didn't think they could.
Right.
And so that's what's really unique about it. Makes it fun.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. At what point in the process does the Stubblefield Center interact with these students? Is it after they've already not completed school, or how does that process work? Does it kind of subvert that a little bit in the process, or?
Yeah, so I guess our relationship begins when a school district, one of our 5 participants, starting with Lufkin, Hudson, Diboll, Central, and Zavala, those ISDs, they have a process to where if they see that a student is at risk of potentially not making it or not finishing, they then refer them to us. At that point, we begin the partnership, as I call it.
Got it.
And so we see where that student is, how much they need to finish to get a high school diploma from that participant or that district. And we build a partnership between that student, that family, and that school.
Interesting.
And that maintains until they finish.
So it catches it early in the process, right? Instead of trying
hopefully,
right. Instead of trying to correct it afterwards.
Exactly. So we try to be as proactive as we can. Mm-hmm. We still are. We will only get a student if they're referred. So we may have a 17-year-old that needs quite a bit to finish, or we may have a 17-year-old that only needs this much to finish. Mm-hmm. And so we have everything in between.
Interesting.
And so just trying to meet that student where they are and get them completed, that's the goal.
Do you typically work with just a certain age range of kids, or do you also help people that want to come back and finish a high school degree?
Great question. We serve both. 90 to 95% of our clientele is the high school age.
Okay.
So a student that's between 16, 18, 19 years old who needs our services comes in. There is the rare occasion where we have an adult learner who, for whatever circumstance, wasn't able to finish. They'll go through an interview process with us. They still fall under the auspice of the home district where they live. So let's say it's a Lufkin ISD. We would still seek permission through them to say, hey, here's this case. Are they in reachable distance? Yes. Do you support us doing this? Yes. And then we go from there and help maybe someone that's 22, 32, or beyond.
That's awesome.
Get that high school diploma so they can.
And they're actually getting a high school diploma, not a GED.
Correct. That's a misconception sometimes.
Yeah.
Is we'll get phone calls left and right. Hey, I want to get my GED. I'm like, well, that's down the road at Angelina College.
Right.
We are a high school diploma that's recognized under TEA. So we're accredited under each district with a campus ID under each district.
Okay.
And that's what's unique as well, because I don't know of another organization in the state that does that with that many school districts.
So we know that school districts are getting funding from a larger level. Where is your funding coming from?
So it's really through the school districts. So our main operating budget is through them, and it's proportionalized out by the size of the district. Obviously, Lufkin's the biggest, Hudson, Diboll, Central, then Zavala. And that student is still under them, so they still receive funding for that student. So that's where the cost balance comes in. Yes, they pay an amount to keep us operating year to year, but then they're still getting funding for that student, so that helps. And then we have a separate side of the donation side that Ms. Darmstetter created 20 years ago, and I'm thankful that she did. And that allows us to cover major things that are beyond the budgeted operation.
Yeah.
If we need a new roof, or if an air conditioning unit goes out, or we have a major plumbing leak like we had this past year during Snowmageddon.
Yeah.
Things like that help us cover the cost.
Nice.
What type of things does the center do? What type of activities does it engage with these students to get them to where they need to be, to get them to finish their education? Is it like a tutoring process? Kind of walk us through what that looks like. What actually happens?
So and that's a great concept to think about. A lot of people don't know. They like, all right, here's the student. All right, here's the graduate. How did that happen?
Right.
So it's non-traditional in the fact that it's flexible time. A student has 4 hours to come over, complete coursework that's self-paced with certified teachers. So I have a group of teachers, 5 teachers that are certified to teach their subjects. They could do at any school in the state of Texas. And so they're working one-on-one with that teacher, completing course at their pace.
Gotcha.
When they've, we have it broken down in each subject into modules and percentages and whatnot. When they finish, then they'll turn that credit in, or a half credit, whatever it is, to that teacher, and we mark it off and they move on.
Interesting.
And so it's day to day. They may get a ton of work done one day. They may not the next.
Right.
Or if they miss 2 days, then that work doesn't move.
Right.
It doesn't move until they come back and get going again.
Interesting.
So it's not taught classroom style. It's one-on-one.
One-on-one, yeah.
Okay.
So let's say it's English 4, your senior English. That teacher's not going to traditionally sit back and present material. They may do in a small group, but more than likely that student is going to be working through, some composition, some reading, some British literature, which is English 4
Always
heavy.
fun.
Yeah. They're going to be working back and forth one-on-one with that teacher, because in that same class, someone else may be at a different portion of English 4 or a different
Almost
portion.
like a Montessori
Yeah.
kind of concept, where each person moves at their own pace, their
Correct.
own level,
Correct.
but they're all kind of doing the same work, but they're doing their own pace.
A better example would probably be in math. So my math teacher may be teaching Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Pre-Cal simultaneously.
Holy moly.
And so you can't traditionally sit back and offer that all at once.
Right.
And so each person is working individually, and he has the ability to step over here and work, step over here and work, and just maneuver around and catch students right where they are and help them. And once a student's kind of gotten it, they can be independent for 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's non-traditional in every sense, just in the campus structure and in the classroom structure, with how students learn and the pace at which they learn.
That's
so
great.
Again, that's unique.
Well, we know you're making an economic impact back into the student. Tell us how you're also making an economic impact back in the community.
It's huge, and these numbers really kind of struck me when I started doing research when I first started at Stubblefield. So there's an organization called the National Educational Statistic Board, and they look at statistics nationwide. And what they found is that a high school dropout over their lifetime impacts the community in $272,000 in a negative way. And so this is considered lost tax revenue, lost income for them, increased need for government-provided programs, increased incarceration rates. And so when I think of that number for one person, I think of, okay, well, we've had 1,900 graduates.
That's right.
Let's do that math. You're looking at about $520 million of not necessarily a tangible thing that you can see, but it's a concept that grows over time of that potential negative impact. And so not only does it affect the community that way, but then your individual, your earning potential, your opportunity advancements are far greater with a high school diploma than with not. And statistics are all over the place for that too. So those are things I think about is, when we see a student is, yes, we want to provide opportunity for them and build a bridge for them for life, but the impact it has on a community, if we can't help this one or this group of people that we have, it's important, not just for them, but for all of us that live in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's a fantastic organization. So who's involved in this operation? You talked a little bit about these educators who are licensed to teach anywhere, and tell us kind of who's involved and how that works.
Cool. So, on our campus, you have myself as the director or principal, been a principal for 10 years. I have a social worker, Mr. Hamilton, who's phenomenal. He's been there 15 plus years. We have a secretary, a group of teachers. Our relation so who's involved is, you've got these 5 school districts that help us operate and send us these students, but then the relationship with the community is key. The support we have from the community, not just for, fundraising, but for support and really sharing the mission of what we do, to me is pivotal in the reason Stubblefield's been so successful. You think back to guys like Trey Henderson, Jay Shands, Tom Darmstatter, Arthur Temple, some of these key names that were involved in the beginning of Stubblefield. It never gets going without some of these people moving, getting things to move. That's kind of the history of involvement. And then now, you've got Chamber of Commerce. You have different charitable organizations, the Temple Foundation, Kurth Foundation, Simon and Louise Henderson. The list goes on and on of the foundations that help support us.
Such a giving community.
Yes, and just individuals. I'm amazed at, walking around the community and finding out people who have graduated from Stubblefield, but people who were connected to Stubblefield in some way. And just seeing how intertwined the function of what Stubblefield is in this community and what it's done. And so it's ongoing and it's growing. It's amazing.
So if somebody were to just be listening to this and they think, I know a kid that needs to go back and finish, how do they get them plugged into you? What's the process of getting a kid enrolled with you?
Well, like I said earlier, the main clientele that we offer service to is the high school age.
Yeah.
Number one, they've got to seek that referral through the home district.
So they need to immediately go back to their home district.
Yes.
Don't come to you.
Correct.
Go to your home
Correct.
district.
Yeah. So we get lots of phone calls and
sure.
lots of people knocking on the door saying, "Hey, I want to come over," which I'm flattered. I think that's a great thing because they've heard about us or they've had friends that have had positive experiences.
Yeah.
But we always refer them back to the home district. And that's where I feel the partnerships that we have with our districts are so key. And so I hope that they know that, our number one goal is to serve them because it serves the student. And hopefully those conversations are happening and they're representing Stubblefield in the right way to reach the students that need to be reached.
Well, y'all did great stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So if no one has, say, we've got over 600 people that are listening to this every Monday, which is really cool. Blake and I never in our wildest dreams did we think this would take off the way it has the last year. But how do people give money to you? Is there a form that they fill out? Do you have an annual fundraiser?
Yeah,
how do they support you?
How can people support the
How do you
organization?
support? Well, you can come see me anytime. I kind of joke. I have this open invitation to the public to, number one, ask about what we do, but number two, come by and see what we do.
Yeah.
That's really out there. Give me a heads up first. Don't just come floating over. But, in terms of giving, we send out a donation letter every year at the beginning of the year. And we get a lot of feedback and giving from that. But if somebody does, we're fiscally held through Hudson ISD. And so if somebody wants to give us a donation, that comes through us, but then it's deposited through them and then helps fund our operation.
Okay.
And so anybody can give anything to us, whether it's $1 or $100,000. We're open
You'll
to
take
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're open to it, and we have that. We have some people that are like, hey, we've heard about what you do. We want to help. We had a parent that their kid had a positive experience with us, and we got a check in the mail a couple of years ago from H&R Block. And I was like, well, that's interesting. This is a nationwide organization. I guess they had, whenever someone's doing their taxes there, you could designate which charitable foundation you wanted H&R Block to give to.
Interesting.
And so they were pumping us, hey,
That's
Stubblefield,
awesome.
Stubblefield. And it turned into a tangible amount of money.
That's fantastic.
And so that's been ongoing for a couple of years.
You need to push Stubblefield through Amazon Smiles.
Okay.
I bet you could push it through that.
Okay.
You know, you can, if you're a Prime member, you can designate where you want Amazon to send a portion of what they make off of you
Okay.
to a certain
Good info,
organization. So Amazon Smiles could help
Okay.
support.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure my wife
Stubblefield.
could just keep you guys in business, like just on that,
Just through Amazon.
just through the Amazon purchases.
We get some Amazon boxes at my doorstep too.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I know what you're talking about.
We all help.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a success story? Tell us one of your favorite stories of a kid that's
Oh, my-
been with you
My
the last 4
goodness.
years.
There's so many. One that really in particular comes to mind is one that I didn't experience myself, but I've learned a lot about now. I have a relationship with this person. Her name now is Dr. Aubrey Jones.
Wow.
And Robert Hamilton, our social worker, was telling me one day about, the past. We love to talk about success stories from other kids. And he said, man, we had this young lady that at the time she was homeless and didn't have any support and came in every day and just had a smile on her face and came through and found a way to just get things done. And then, so I'm telling this story at a chamber event that I was speaking at, and come to find out, she's sitting in the crowd.
No way.
She lives here.
Oh, that gives me chills.
She lives here, and so she works now with the Texas Workforce Commission, and she's in their human resource area, and we're talking, and then she's like, yeah, I'm finishing my doctorate right now, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
Like, to know where you came from, to know that Stubblefield got to be a part of that,
that's right.
and to see now what you're doing, that's just one
You
of
gave her
so
a
many,
foundation.
so many stories. I tell people all the time, we can't save you from your situation, but we sure can help build a bridge to get past it and to face opportunity later on.
Right.
I always call it connecting the dots. Let's not only finish your high school diploma, but let's connect dots to what you could be. Who could you be? You're not defined by your current circumstance, but look what's out here. Don't let this drag you down. Let's get this diploma, but then look what's out here. And so, I used Aubrey Jones as a primary example of she could have been easily held back by that situation, but she realized education's important, and there was an organization there to say, hey, yes, it's important. We can kind of meet you where you are and get you to where you could be, and look where she is.
Yeah.
And countless stories. Oh my goodness, one of the things I love the most is when kids come back to see us and they're dressed in their Army gear, the Navy gear, or they've been out working on the oil pipeline making great money or something and driving brand new vehicles. I'm floored. We had a kid, last name is Zapata. He left. He was helping raise siblings, tough living situation. Within a year, he comes back. He's driving a big brand new truck. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm a foreman on the pipeline. Well, how'd you become that? Well, I'm bilingual. I'm using my skills.
That's
You guys
right.
told me that I could use these skills to just go and do.
Propel.
Like, don't just weld, but be the best at that and be the best communicator
That's right.
and make a connection with these people above you. And they realized, hey, you know what? He's great at that and he can speak Spanish. We need this. And he's one of the top guys already. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and I guess what's unique too, and this is a misperception, is that a lot of people think when a student comes to Stubblefield, it might be punitive. It's not. Maybe that student might have been in trouble at their current school, but when they come to us, it's a different setting. The
Yeah.
culture's a little different. We can work with you a little better in situations. And that's not to knock the regular school district. It's just we're smaller. We can be more relational with you, more intentional with you. And we see students go to the moon and back that were struggling in a regular school.
Yeah.
You give them that space and you give them that freedom to kind of be in control again, and they flourish. And they go off and they do great things. And it's, you go, to me, to see a student go from you're not going to make it to, yeah, you got your high school diploma, yes, you went to college and you're pursuing a professional, career. To me, that's phenomenal, because that could have went completely the wrong way just because of one circumstance at 16, 17 years old. And I thank God that there's an organization like Stubblefield to catch that student and to kind of say, hey, well, hold on a sec. Let's do it on your terms.
Yeah.
And let's try to make this happen so tomorrow can be preserved. Because I would hate to see today mess that up.
I'm sure the net positive swing that you get to watch is really interesting, because it's more than just like attaining what they can achieve because they now have the degree, but it changes the world for them, right? Instead of, it opens up doors that were very much closed because they hadn't finished that. So just the positive swing that you get to watch from that is probably really, really interesting to see.
Blake, I think I'm going to steal that phrase, a net positive swing.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happens, because you're catching something that's in negative momentum.
Right.
All right. And not to put a human being in those terms, but life can do that to us. It can send you in this negative trajectory. And if you don't have the family structure or the house support to help catch you and kind of reestablish where you need to go, what will?
Yeah.
Because this world's not going to do it for you.
Right.
The world can be mean. And so luckily, we're able to catch students at the right time and not just have the X's and O's of the academics, but, between myself and Mr. Hamilton and our staff, we're able to really pour into these students from an emotional perspective to help build them. You cannot put a price on positive interaction with people, on building a culture of positive expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
You can take a student from a horrible situation and all of a sudden you treat them like they're a 5-star king. They're going to act like it.
That's right.
It's amazing. And we don't do that just to be psychologically manipulative. We just believe in that. We believe that if you attack the heart of an issue and treat people well, great things are more likely to happen. And that's where that positive net outcome comes from. That's the greatest joy that I see out of this.
I can imagine. Yeah.
We're changing a negative momentum swing into a positive gain.
Yeah.
Well, and you're changing future generations.
Yeah.
You've caught it, and now you're changing the trajectory not only for that person but for their children and for their future. They get to go and say, somebody gave me a second chance and helped get me on the right path, and you can do the same.
Yeah. I think it's a common phrase we all know. It's I can't remember the psychologist that coined it. It said, we don't always remember what was said to us, but we remember how we felt.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we can all go back in our lives from when we were little all the way up, and you remember those people of influence that you had, the negative and the good.
That's right.
Because you remember how you felt. And what we get a lot of, and we feedback from our kids and parents that we deal with, is they appreciate being treated with respect. They appreciate, they're like, man, you guys were so real. You were so genuine. And I'm like, once again, that brings me joy, because we are intentionally trying to do that because we know the outcome is greater if we're able to do that. If you just have a system in place and say, these are the rules, follow it, and if it doesn't work out, then that's on you. I get it. A lot of that exists in the world. But if we have a chance to live in this gray area of going, you know what, we have a chance to influence this kid or whoever, this young adult, beyond the black and white of the rules. We can live in this gray area and provide support in necessary areas. That's
Why
where
not?
the real, why not? Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
And so that's where I see the real net positive growth with people, is you pour into them and they're going to appreciate it. They're going to remember it.
That's right.
And then tell you about it later.
Love that.
I think you might have the coolest job in Lufkin and Angelina County.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I
One of the
wanna
most fulfilling, for sure, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's definitely fulfilling. I guess, being around other young professionals and having lots of friends doing different things in the world and talking to them. And once again, I started off with this, it's like my favorite thing to do is talk about Stubblefield. And it's, number one, I love it. But number two, I know what it's doing. I know that the actions that we take have fruit, positive fruit that's being produced. And not everybody gets to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people it's in the form of a humongous paycheck or a massive bonus structure. Those are nice, right?
Yeah.
It allows us to do things. Money's important. But when you can pour into and invest in a person and see the outcome, the return on the investment, that's key. And that goes back to the whole business model. It's like, yeah, there's a $272,000 negative impact on a student or a person's life. if they don't finish. But you can't put a price on the positive output.
Generational changes.
That happens. Yeah, generational. Like,
Yeah.
what effect does this really have beyond just
Yeah.
that person? It's unknown.
I want to ask you about the gray area that you talked about. It seems that sometimes these students that may end up at the center struggled with the structure or the organization of what the normal education system was providing. What do you typically see as the biggest stumbling block or hurdle for these kids and young adults that you're working with? What's typically put them in the place that they need the help?
That's such a moving target, but it's a great question. The gray area that we live in is, one system doesn't fit all. It's kind of like this cookie cutter concept.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't put a cookie cutter out and go, all right, everyone's going to fit into
Yeah,
this.
that's exactly right.
Unfortunately, sometimes public education kind of puts that mold around us, and
Right.
we have to follow that path. Good things have happened in the career and tech world where schools have been able to kind of branch out and offer different pathways, and that's going on. All of our ISDs are doing a good job at branching out and saying, all right, there isn't one size that fits all. But what happens is that the system is still saying, hey, you got to be here from 8 to 3:30 every day.
Right.
A lot of times if we send work home to you, it's not a test of your intelligence, whether it gets done. It's a test of the structure of your home life,
Exactly.
of whether or not it gets done.
Right.
So imagine a 7-year-old that's sent homework home, or an 8-year-old, and whether or not they get it done, it's probably not an indicator of how smart they are. It's an indicator of whether or not they had that parent sitting right there going, hey, did you get this done?
Get it
Exactly.
done.
Is that happening? And so I guess for us, the gray area that we can live in is like, all right, here's the academic piece, and you're going to get this done here. And if you're having a really tough emotional day, we can work with that.
Right.
If you're about to have a meltdown, we can work with that.
But the typical system can't.
That's
though.
right.
It can't
For the
because,
most part,
because
right.
of numbers.
Right.
Yeah. You can to a degree, but you can't be as an intentional and relational
Right.
one-on-one with that student because of the numbers. And so that's where we can come in and fit that gray area need and work with that student. The student could come have a conversation with me for 20 or 30 minutes if they want. You can't, it's hard to do that at a regular school because that principal may be tied up. And so then you start to build trust. And then you've built trust with someone that's never trusted the system.
Yeah.
And so then you can start doing different things and other avenues open up. And that, I know that's kind of a broad answer.
No, that's great.
To a question,
Yeah.
but it's always moving. That you can't put one kid in one mold. We're all humans. We're very different when you really look at us internally. We all respond to stimulus, but those responses are very different over time because you have different things going on at home that we can't see.
That's right.
Here's a percentage I think about often is in a regular school system, they base it on minutes now. TEA gives you an amount of minutes that you have to follow. It's like 75,600 or so. We see a kid in that amount of minutes 14% of the time.
Interesting.
But we're in charge as a school system of 100% of their learning.
Right.
It's really a concept that it blows my mind.
Yeah.
If you take me in our partial day, you cut that number to 7%. So I've got a student that walks in my door that's the state of Texas says, you see this person 7% of the time, but you're 100% accountable to their learning
Interesting.
or their completion. And so we've really been given a daunting task.
Yeah, it's a big
as,
challenge.
as public educators to meet
Sure.
these standards, but we're only around a student so long. But that also brings me to the point of how important the home life is of a student's outcome. And luckily, you've got Stubblefield who can help bridge a gap to a student that may not have that structure or
Interesting.
support.
That's great. Wow, that's an
Wow.
awesome organization. So where can people who are, I know this has been eye-opening for me. I didn't even know the depth of everything that you did there, but where can people go to learn more if they want to support the organization, if they know someone who may be in either? Where can they go? Where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
Well, they can find us at 502 College Drive.
Yeah.
That's where we physically are. And
Perfect.
our website is directly attached to Hudson ISD's
Great.
under a campus. So we're Stubblefield Learning Center under their campuses. And you can read a brief history and kind of connect with us that way.
Sure.
In terms of the giving aspect, like you talked about, Tara, it's just directly to us. And we get a lot of that. And we're, for that,
So
we're
write checks.
Yeah, write checks, whatever you want to do. It goes directly to the operation.
Okay.
We're well taken care of by lots of support, obviously from our school districts who participate, but then also from the private industry side and the private donation side, the foundation side. It's really phenomenal to see all of that kind of working.
People believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, believing in what we're doing.
Yeah.
I always tell people, don't just listen to what I say. Come see what we do, and talk to our kids. I get such a treat out of when the media or Lufkin Daily follows us on our graduations. And what I talk about in our graduations is these are victories. These are victories for people that would not have otherwise seen it. And I love it when they get quotes from our kids because they talk about that and it's real. And I'm like, yes, that's what it's about. It's about what their experience is and the opportunity that's going to give them.
That's right.
And I love it when it's promoted by the media or by others or just anyone in general. And so I do tell the public, hey, we do great things. I'm telling you that, but we walk it.
Yeah.
We walk it every day. I was walking it before I came here, and I'm going to do it when I go back. It's real. It's not just lip service. It is a real thing that's happening, and we're open all year. So, right now a lot of schools are closed. We've got a summer school going on. I'm going to go back and be checking on kids to make sure that they have finished what they need to finish. But it's done in a way of, I want to see you win.
Yeah.
Not you need to get back to work. It's not about that. Let's go win something.
Yeah.
That's what we're chasing.
Yeah. That's
Love that.
fantastic.
So,
Well,
Jeff,
we're
thank you so much.
honored to have you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming. Thank you so much.
I appreciate anything that any support that we have,
That's
from
right.
the chamber,
Sure.
from Blake. I appreciate what you're doing with these podcasts, and I think it's a great way to promote great things that are happening in
That's
Lufkin and Angelina
It
County,
is.
man.
It is. Well,
it's
thank
an
you so
awesome way to
much.
do it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Jeff, and thank you for sharing your heart with us and telling us about this organization. I can't think of an organization that's doing something more important than what you guys are doing. It's very,
Cool.
very valuable to the community. And we want to thank you so much for listening or watching this week. If you want to catch the video version of this podcast, you can find it on the Chamber YouTube page and on the Chamber Facebook page. And we will see you next week.